So Subtract's The Rat Road has been out for quite a few weeks now, and it's an album that I was very highly anticipating. I think Subtract is a fascinating producer, somebody who I think has established themselves as a very foreboding and cutting-edge creative force in the UK electronic dance music scene for a long time. Back in the early 2010s, Aaron Jerome, aka Subtract, toted a uniquely rhythmic approach to dance music that used the warm electronic tones akin to artists like Flume and Jamie XX, James Blake, and Caribou. He took sounds like that to energetic heights by injecting them with the music of his South Asian background. Very tribal rhythms on that debut album from 2011, the self-titled. That is a wonderfully executed slice of colourful dance music that I still think is really exciting to listen to even 12 years later, very succinctly showcasing that aforementioned style that he settled into during those early days of his career. The next album, Wonder Where We Land, was a much more transparent and somber album that kind of released to mixed reviews. Some people do like it, others not so much. Dedicated to the loss of his brother, this album was an effort to musically broaden the definition of what a Subtract song sounds like by bringing on vocal guests that come from all types of musical backgrounds: hip-hop, indie rock, modern electro-pop. It wasn't quite the same focused punch that the debut was, and now we have The Rat Road, and I would like to quickly get out of the way that if you were let down by Wonder Where We Land and you were hoping to hear a return to that focus from his debut, I really don't think you're going to be satisfied at all with The Rat Road. I think this is actually probably his most challenging album to date, but if you saw Wonder Where We Land as a leap forward creatively and you found that quite exciting, maybe The Rat Road would be more of your thing. It definitely leads more into that side of things than it does the debut. The truth is though, now that The Rat Road is here, it did have the Save Yourself EP in between and a few remixes, but nothing that really cemented what the direction of the next full-length album would be. And now that it's here and I've heard it multiple times, I still don't know what it is that defines Subtract. I think the biggest thing that I'm struggling with The Rat Road is its just general lack of identity, and honestly I'm finding this album very disappointing, unfortunately. He may now have very well cornered himself into a point where what he's making has just been rendered nameless, faceless. I think The Rat Road is very scattered, too scattered, and this scattershot approach to everything, from its feature list to its actual core sound and production, it varies so massively. I just think it gets to a point where it loses a certain connection to the listener, in my opinion. In my case, that's kind of what I felt. The quality varies, but the artistic execution and approach varies a lot too. It's a very Jackson Pollock style album. 1 second it'll sound high definition and futuristic, the next very muddy and mangled, and I ultimately just don't think it really pays off much. But if you're looking for an album that merely serves to act as an unapologetically slapdash update as to what Subtract has been doing on his door for the last 7 to 9 years, condensed into 1 hour, then maybe this album might compel you, but I just found it to be more frustrating than enjoyable. The first thing that struck me about this record is the structure. It's 22 tracks with only 8 that exceed the 2.5 minute mark, and in my experience of listening to albums and curating my own albums, it is extremely hard to structure an album in that way, where it's a lot of songs, a lot of them are very short, and to not have it leaving you just a little bit unfulfilled by the end. There are definitely some exceptions to that, but generally speaking, I think albums that opt for that approach just kind of fall flat. And yeah, I think these 22 tracks certainly left me with a lot to think about. There is a lot happening, but as far as musicality, as far as core tracks, there's really not a lot to chew on here. The broken presentation of it definitely make the album feel effectively earnest and damaged as a whole piece. It is maybe potentially very moving in that way, but I just don't find the individual songs themselves to be communicating that same damage. Most of this runtime isn't even spent really giving you like fully fleshed out songs. It's kind of awkwardly guiding you from one song to the next most of the time, using these oppressive sub-synths and effect-drenched vocal passages as interlude vehicles. It often kind of feels like how it is when you're trying to go back to the train station with your mate and they're using Google Maps, but the shoddy connection means it keeps redirecting you somewhere else, and you're kind of always on the brink of maybe getting there, but never quite on a clear track. That's exactly how this record feels, and when you do land on a destination, it's just like Subtract hits randomize on the style and the feature list, and the opening track, Waiting, right away sets you up for this experience. Tizo Touchdown delivers a very passionate performance. Admittedly, he's very fed up of waiting for a helping hand to come and fix everything and guide him, and is instead just taking agency on everything he can control. A very uplifting message to kick things off with, but as a song, it is just barely holding together. I think his voice is mixed far too highly for one, and his melodies, they're just flying all over the place. He is a hair away from being entirely off key. The beat is littered with janky sample clicks, clashing tones. There's an explosion of phases and reverbs and ensemble effects at the end that sound more squashed than they do triumphant to me. It ends up being a pretty uncomfortable introduction, if not a very experimental idea. You're going to get a lot of tracks that just kind of feel like production experiments on this album, rather than really fulfilling tracks. As a song, the following tune, Days Go By, is a stronger song, but it reads more like a first draft of what could be rather than a finished product. I think different drums could have done wonders for this song, especially. These songs instrumentally, they are messy, but do sound like things that are in Subtract's repertoire, so I still do think this could maybe satisfy some long-time Subtract fans, but I would have expected material like this to be like leftover stuff from the first two albums rather than final cut stuff for the new album. The only tracks on this record that managed to successfully feel like an exciting evolution for Subtract would be Limitless, LFO, Demons, and You Broke My Heart But I'ma Fix It. These songs I actually really did quite like, and they didn't feel like tracks that could exist on the first two. They felt like a step forward, and they didn't fall flat on their face, in my opinion, and offered exciting ideas in a well-structured, well-ordered way. Some other standouts as well include You Love, Don't Let, and the enchanting Saya interlude at the end of the album, though these are definitely smaller tracks that serve to kind of bolster up and improve the full album listen rather than act as tracks that you can enjoy on and stand on their own 2 feet and enjoy them independently. They were still welcome additions to the track list for me. I also quite like the warmth of Layla's vocals as well. Whenever they do pop up, there's quite a few features from her. Sampha as well. His production always has and still does fit Sampha's tone really nicely. And there are spots that will definitely prick your ears up on this record and really offer you ideas that are worth pondering over, but I just found these moments were just overshadowed with wasted time that I just spent wondering why I was even listening to this. The payoff at the end with the last couple of tracks, one of which is the album's title track, was just completely underwhelming. There's another Tizo Touchdown appearance too, and as much as I like his vocal style and I'm excited to see what he does on his debut album whenever that comes about, he and Subtract are simply proving to be a very weak pairing on this album. Their work together here just does not work for me. The Rat Road, unfortunately, overall, it's joining Scaring the Hose and Heavy Heavy in the slowly growing list of albums released this year that have just really disappointed me. Subtract's bold ambition lies more in dipping his toes into lots of potentially interesting ideas, and less in bringing those ideas into their strongest form. This album has no semblance of cohesion to me at all. It's an album that proved to be exhausting above all else, and doesn't offer even a hint of the material that made Subtract an exciting figure in the first place. You're not going to get a single Pharaohs or a Wildfire on this album, or a Hold On. None of that. And I would give it a 4 out of 10.